Hello, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. We're building the Lander Trail Foundation online searchable database using PowerApps and SQL Server. In this installment, I'm going to show you how I prefer to save edits in records in the PowerApps environment. And it is just the opposite of the way I prefer to do it in the Access environment. In the Access world, we have the ability to bind record sources to forms, and it's much more efficient to let Access handle all of the data updates through that bound form. In the PowerApps world, after I first tried to use forms, which are a little bit different thing in PowerApps, I began to get a little bit frustrated, and eventually I learned how to use the patch command to update records or to add new records to an underlying table. And as I worked with that, I became convinced that although it's not the same as what I would do in the Access world, it seems to be a more effective way to do it here. So I'm going to show that to you. I have pulled up again one of the 4 books on Tom Horn, and I'm going to edit it, and then I'm going to save it and show you how that works. This one has only a couple of minor edits that we can make. Right here we have the short dash rather than the long dash, which we use to set off clauses in sentences, and it has kind of an ugly look because of that. So we're going to edit that, and then we'll see if there's anything else on the edit screen that we can update or change while we're at it. We're going to go into this text, find the short dash that I don't like, and insert the double dash, which substitutes for the long dash in this environment. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and capitalize Army Scout while I'm at it. Skim through that, see if there's anything else. I believe that's all we want to do. I don't have information on the printing or the edition or the list price, so I will leave those blank, but I'm going to just, for the sake of having something to demonstrate to you, pretend like this particular book is on the 3rd shelf of whatever bookcase that belongs to. And then I'm going to save it. Save command pushes all the new information back to the underlying table and comes back to the display form, and as I was talking, you could see that it actually updated the display form with the changes that I had made here. Let's go back and look at how this works using the code behind the Save button. In the Access world, we have the on-click or the after update or the before update, after insert. We have many events which will fire code that will do data manipulation, data storage tasks for it. Here, the workhorse is the onSelect action of the control. In this case, we're using a command button, and the onSelect event of it does all the work. As I suggested, I'm using the patch command. If you want to know more about the patch command, I suggest you go to my YouTube channel. You'll find 2 or 3 videos there when I was building Mike's mobile library where I talked about using patch to update records. I just want to hit a couple of highlights about the way I did it here. Patch basically says save this information to the underlying table. In this case, it's the publication table. We have to distinguish between adding a new record and updating an existing record. There are 2 forms of the syntax that tell PowerApps which one we want to do and how to do it. If this variable called var publication is blank, That means we're looking at a new record, a new book that has never been added to the database before, and that variable, var publication, will be blank. If it is blank, we're going to use the defaults for table publication. Any field which has a default value set, and any field which has an identity value, the primary key for a table, will be updated according to those defaults in the database. However, if this variable is not blank, we're going to find the first publication in the underlying record source where the publication ID, and that's the primary key, matches this publication's publication ID. That allows us to find the first matching record, and that's the one we're going to update. Notice that because we're looking at a primary key, we should only ever get one record. There should be only one record that matches on the primary key, but the syntax we have to use is that we pull the first out of that record set. The rest of the code here updates the fields in the underlying table. We have the open curly bracket and the close curly bracket. Publication title is one of the fields in the table. Volume, number of volumes, those are two other fields. The catalog number, the year published, the number of pages, and so on. Each of these values. If it is a text field, we take the text property from the input control, convert it to text, and save it in that field. If it's a number, we use the value, which is the numerical value of whatever is in that text. So if the volume is volume 1, we're going to convert that to the number 1 and put that here. We convert our catalog to uppercase. We grab the year published and we treat that as text. Sometimes it matters, as with numbers. We want to make sure we're using number values. Sometimes it's okay to accept the implicit data type. Same is true for the number of pages, the addition, that's going to be a text description, the printing, and so on. Comments. Comments is the equivalent of a long text field in Access. It's a varchar max in SQL Server. I trim off any leading and trailing blanks and stick the whole text into that field. Publisher ID, that's a foreign key from the publisher table. So we go ahead and grab publisher ID, which is a variable, convert it to a value, and push it into that field. Same is true for media condition, a foreign key, a foreign key. We grab each of our variables, convert them to numbers, and push them into the proper field. Confidence level, again, convert to a number. Internal comments, spelling counts. Apparently, I misspelled the name of that field when I set up the original table. As long as I put the right values in the right fields, I'm fine. And the shelf ID is, again, converting the value that we have for this variable and pushing it into the shelf ID. Cover photo is handled in a different place. This is just a reminder to myself that I don't need to worry about storing the link to the cover photo here. I'm doing that elsewhere. Close out, close up the patch command, and I'm done. That's pretty much it. That's how the patch command works. So, the patch command is very much the same approach we would use in an unbound form, where we use VBA and either an append query or an update query to update or add records in our underlying table without going through the bound form to do that. I found when I was trying to do that kind of task with a bound form in PowerApps, it was very frustrating. I mentioned this earlier. And even though it was against my instincts to go to a more unbound approach, the patch command I found more intuitive, at least for my purposes, more straightforward, more obvious what's happening, and I lean more and more on it as the preferred technique, although I still occasionally use forms. In the next video, we'll take a look at these variables, because you notice I used variables to determine whether we're going to add or update records, and I also used different variables to determine what values go into these fields. Variables are part of the world of database development. There are two types of variables. We'll learn about the two types in our next video and how to use them to track state between two different screens. We don't worry about state so much in the Access world. In the web browser, we need to worry about the state of our apps, and we handle that with variables. So we'll pick that up in the next video. In the meantime, if you like what you saw, please hit the like button. If you learned something, please give me feedback in the comments, sign up for future videos, and click that notification bell. I'll see you next time.